Well, good evening, everybody, and how are we all doing today? It's Sunday night, which means it's time for another one of our fantastic live streams. And this is the chance for us all to get together and talk about gardening. Now, today, the conversation is going to go along of how do you stay motivated with your gardening? This is a question that, well, not so much posed to me, but it's been on my front of my mind for a while now. I there was let me get my words out. I spoke to somebody a couple of weeks ago. Mentioned they were struggling a bit in their gardening motivation, and what with the weather lately, it got me thinking about that. So, I guess the first question I'm going to ask is. Um, are you struggling currently with motivation? And now, while you think on that and share your answer, I'm going to go through the comments. If I'm a little bit slow tonight, I apologize. I've had a very hectic weekend. I will explain all in a moment. But let's see who we actually have here today. We've got Adrian saying, hello, Richard and all. Good evening to you, Adrian. Hope you are well. We've got Ballysillian Allotment Man. Hello, everyone, he says. Good evening to you. We've got Graham Bolton. Hi, guys. Hope everyone is well. Good evening to you. Turbo Stream is also out there saying, good evening, Veg Podcasters. Good evening to you. Kate Spratt is out there saying, good evening, Veg Army. Good evening to you. Hargrave Guest is out there saying, evening all. Hope you've had a good week. Hoping for some inspiration tonight, as weather not helping with my motivation. I know exactly how you feel. Digwell was saying, ho ho, seasonal greetings to one and all. Who's going to have a busy night next Sunday, Irene? We'll find out. Scott says, good evening, everyone. I always struggle this time of year for motivation, so I'm looking forward to this one. I'm with you there. Stuart Jackson, evening, Richard and the Veg Army. Good evening to you, my friend. Hope you are well. Graham says, in reply to Hargrave Gas, my motivation is feeding my family chemical-free food, mate. The chemicals they use on a commercial food, the more illnesses seem to pop up from nowhere. That's a very good motivation point, I have to admit. Anna Jones is out there saying, good evening, gardeners. Good evening to you. Lovely to see. Philly SPB, hello, everyone. Good evening to you. Graham also says, remember to hit the like button. Please do hit that like button. And subscribe. Please do subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Last time I was 3 subscribers away from hitting that 1,000 subscriber mark. So be good to get that there. Ian Sayer is out there saying, good evening, good to see you again. Good to see you too, Dad. Me and my dad have had a very busy weekend. We're probably going to need a bit of help keeping awake. Not that you guys are boring or anything. I'll explain in just a moment. Chili Kate saying, good evening, everyone. Good evening to you. We have got Idaho saying hello to everyone. Good evening to you. We have got Anna Jones also said hello. Rebecca is out there saying good evening. If I remember correctly, it was Rebecca who said she was having trouble a couple of weeks ago. I might have got that wrong, but I think so. Bethan's Kitchen Garden is out there saying evening all. Good evening to you. Motivation, just time. Too much going on at this time of year. Good enough. Yeah, I know exactly how you feel. And then Stuart Jackson says, sorry, I missed last week. Life just took over. Now, as I said, I was asking at the very beginning of this show if you are lacking in motivation at the moment, if you are struggling for one reason or another to not get out in the garden or down on the allotment. Now, I have been saying for the last, it feels like weeks, but November and December, it just feels like every weekend it has been raining. We've had the odd dry day, and it certainly has affected my motivation. Plus, we've had other things in the way. As I said, me and my dad are a little tired because we have been moving my sister today, and yesterday actually moving her into our flat. So a lot of heavy lifting up 2 flights, up to 2 stories, sofas, furniture, clothes. We are knackered. We are knackered. And that's meant I've had to go to the allotment for very early this morning while it was still dark just to try and get a little bit done. And I am finding the motivation, not so much the motivation isn't there for the allotment, it's that the motivation is there, but the weather isn't on my side, or it's dark, or there's things getting in the way. And it's just not helping me get on down and get down to the allotment. And when I do get that odd 5 minutes that I do have a bit of spare time, I'm just not finding it enough motivation to get down on the allotment. It's too nice to sort of, you know how it is. I feel that if I can get down to the allotment in the morning, that sets me up for the day. If it's late afternoon when it's not raining, it feels a little pointless going on down. So that's where I'm having troubles with the motivation. Greg says, because I don't have much spare daylight time in winter, I relish any chance I get. I view it as exercise as well. Sometimes better to have intense 2 hours instead of pottering around all day. I'm with you on that. I totally agree with that, especially in the allotment. You know, it's much better, I feel, go down the allotment for a couple of hours on a weekend. Yes, during the week, slightly different when time's not on our side, but definitely for a couple of hours, intense work on a weekend. Totally with you. We have Rebecca says, it's been so wet, cold and snowy, makes it so tricky to get out. And is that affecting your motivation, do you think? Do you think if we were to wind back, this year's been pretty wet to be fair, but if we could wind back time to the summer where we got the dry days, the nice sun, would that motivate you to get out in the garden again? Graham says, managed to get 24 blackcurrant bush cuttings planted today as the allotment was a no-go due to health. 24 blackcurrant bush cuttings. That's a lot, but good show, good show. Now, this is interesting, what you said there, Graham. You couldn't go down to the allotment because of your health. Does that affect your motivation as such? Or is it more that you have, like me, you have space at home to do this sort of thing? So let us know. Let us know. Anna Jones says, I usually just end up forcing myself to go outside to do some tidying. But this year, there's just so much mud and standing water in my garden. I would be making more mess than I was clearing up. With you on that. Completely with you as well. There's a lot of things I want to do in my garden. I'm hoping to get done over Christmas that I just want to get on and do and tidy it up, make the garden look Instagrammable is the word, isn't it? Once again. But I feel if I walk on it, there's just going to be more mud. Turbo Stream says, my motivation is lacking due to the grey and dismal weather at this time of year. I don't really enjoy the run up to Christmas. Plus, it's the day when my dad suddenly died in 2001. Was that on Christmas Day he died? I'm very, very sorry to hear that, buddy. Very sorry. I hope you are okay, my friend. Bethan says 24 blackcurrant bushes. Are you going to be supplying Ribena, Graham? It is a lot, isn't it? Assuming they all take, that is going to be a lot of plants. But I love blackcurrants. I love blackcurrants. Idaho said, people were stealing my fruit and veg. I wanted to try and pot up a tall fence. HOA said no. Tough to keep motivated. So guess what? I brought a different place. I'm moving in now. HOA can go to a very hot spot. Fantastic. Hopefully we'll get to see your new garden pretty soon then. It's always good. I know quite a few people are currently moving. Idaho, I think one of the Kates, Kate Spratt was moving. Jenny, who's not here tonight, has also just moved. I don't envy you. After this weekend, I can honestly say I never want to move house again. Never want to move house again. Stuart Jackson says, motivation isn't a problem, but it's the weather that pots me off as my clay soil doesn't like me on it. With you? Yes. Again, so far, everybody is sort of saying it's the weather that's the problem. So I think that's definitely true. Turbo Stream says, so to try and motivate me, I am now doing a daily 3-mile walk and using the time off from the plot as a mini gardening holiday. Look forward to getting back in the garden in the new year. Now, this is actually something that I made a note of that I wanted to mention, is that let's forget the weather. Let's park the weather for one moment. But there are times that we all feel a little bit demotivated when we're in the garden. We feel a bit like, oh, I could be doing this or that, or don't really feel like doing this or that. So there are times like that. And I was sort of thinking to myself, what do I do when I just feel a lack of motivation? That is when I often take a mini gardening holiday, as Turbo Stream puts it. And what I mean by that, what I like to do is, I'm not going to go to the allotment or do any gardening this weekend, but I will pop out and visit a nice garden or somewhere to get a few ideas, to get some inspiration and get motivation again. Once again, we've got a few decent gardens near us. We've got High Down in Worthing, which is free, so that's one I can jump in at the drop of a hat. We've also got West Dean, we've got Arundel Castle, we've got many other gardens in the area that I can just pop along, pay a bit of money, take a walk around. Most of them accept dogs. Most of these gardens are now allowing dogs into the grounds too, which makes it even easier to go and visit these places and just get a few ideas and get some motivation. Bally Saloon says 100% health puts your plans up in the air. I've so much to do on the allotment, but can't do anything. So frustrating. So yes, health. Obviously, I know a few. I've always said when anybody has said they are unwell. I haven't seen Nicola tonight, but I know she broke her ankle and things. I've always said the garden will still be there when you come back. So it's not the end of the world if you don't get it done. The garden will still be there when you come back, when you are feeling better. It's far more important that you look after your health and put yourself first. Graham says, I have space at home for a small amount, but the cuttings were put into pots to take to the allotment when health picks up a bit. Completely, yeah, health picks up a bit, definitely. I think it is important that we look after ourselves. Definitely think it is important to look after ourselves. At the same point, I do think gardening does help with certainly mental health, but also physical health too. But it's that fine line between what can I do and what can't I do to make myself feel better or worse, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? Digwet says, I'm loving the no dig, as it does not really matter if you miss a week or two on the plot at this time of year. Only a little weeding and compost laying to do. I agree. Yeah, I mean, I've been doing a bit of mulching is all I've really been doing this weekend, and try adding more horse manure to the compost bins. But I've always said this time of year, I mean, December is a tricky one, but certainly winter is the key time for doing the infrastructure jobs, the building of new beds and things like that, when there's not much else to do. But yeah, totally with you on the no dig. Mulching, spreading compost does make things easy. Turbo Sue said, Dad died today in 2001. Yes, I'm okay. Thanks, Richard. Potted a few onion seedlings that I sowed in October. Also sowed a pot of lettuce this week. Very sorry to hear about your dad, buddy. Yeah. There's not much I can say, is there? But yeah. Digwell says, most normal weather demotivation comes from peer pressure, thinking that you need to be as good as the next plot, etc. That is a very good point, and I think social media has a bit of a social media, and should we say the magazines and normal media, where they show everything being glitzy, being looking fantastic all year round, and particularly magazines. I find that magazines, they normally write their issues about 2 months in advance, so they're talking about what they're doing in December. Back in 2 months ago would have been October, and that makes you sort of read it and you sort of thinking, wow, they're getting on and doing all this in December, when no, it's not. It's months ago when the weather was very different. This is why I like social media. Like, in some ways it has a lot to answer for, not to be said, is that you get to see what other people are doing, so you can sort of say, yes, it's wet, so I can't, they're not doing it when it's wet. Yeah. Graham agreed, Diggy mate. I'm full no dig now after Friday's manure and leaves filling my last beds to fill. Fantastic. Scott says, I bought a fire bin and plan to start doing a few fires over the next few weeks. The idea is that I will stay at the plot until the fire is done and get jobs done. That is a very good idea. In fact, on my old allotment, I used to do something similar, not on purpose though, but we would burn stuff and I would have excuse me, I would have to stay until the fire had died down before I could leave. So I wasn't going to sit there doing nothing. I had to do things. Turbostream says, I was disappointed on checking my Brussels sprouts yesterday. I've grown bigger peas. Guess I will be buying the Aldi 20p ones again. I've had a really good year with Brussels sprouts. I would say they were a bit early this year, is the only criticism I had. Idaho says, yes, when I had my hip replaced, I was laid up for longer than I liked. This comes back to what we were saying about health. You know, you've got to look after your health. You've got to put your health first. And if your health is saying you can't do anything in the garden, so be it. So be it. Health is a big deal. Brian's gone and Polly Tanner has joined. Hi all. Hello to you. We're talking about how do you motivate yourself to get in the garden or do anything when you don't feel motivated. Greg says a lot of hobbies are seasonal. The off season gives you the appetite to go back. Growing can be seasonal if you want it to be, or can tick over constantly. I can't decide which I want it to be. You make a good point. I mean, when a lot of the hobbies I've done in the past. So if I go back to my kickboxing, I did that all year round. But obviously, that's an indoor. The only time we sort of stopped was when the teacher was on holiday. So Christmas, New Year, and a couple of weeks in the summer, or if I was unwell. But when it comes to things like gardening, yeah, I try and garden, or I want to garden all year round. And we mentioned earlier that we want to, about eating food all year round. And that is a big thing for me. I want to be able to eat food all year round. So I try and make sure I've always got food coming in, even in December from the garden, the allotment. And that means I've got to garden all year round. But it has been difficult this year, in this month and November, to find the motivation because it's been wet. Digwood says, I've got a 800 kilogram delivery of Wonder Post coming from Suffolk, other side of the country, mid-January. Best thing I've ever used. Wonder Post? And Graham says the same thing. I was wondering, what is Wonder Post, Digwell? Turbo Stream says, as a no digger, there isn't a lot to do anyway. More frustrating that I can have some brambles to dig out, but it's still so wet. All you do is get covered in mud so it can wait. Yeah, I agree. The jobs like that do need to wait, digging out brambles and things. But, you know, we will get there. What have we got? Bethan says, this time of year is so busy with doing lots of Christmas things with family that I don't have much time to be in the garden. But I'm looking forward to getting my gardening jobs done. So, as probably many of you know, I am not a fan of Christmas. I find it to be a bit of an annoying time. And my reason for that is everything, when we hit December, everybody sort of puts things on hold till after Christmas. It's like it's a barrier that stops things getting done just for basically one day. But then there's so many family that we have to see because there's a bit of a peer pressure to go, I believe, peer pressure to go and visit family. It is important, of course, to see family, but I'd sooner see family all year round. But there is a lot to do for many of us during Christmas time as well, getting presents, making sure you've got plenty of food in the fridge and freezer, visiting family, making Christmas parties and what have you, that it does sort of eat in to your time. And it's a fine balance, isn't it, to try and make sure you spend enough time with your family or doing things that the Christmassy things, as well as doing the gardening things that you want to do. That mental health side of things, I think, is quite important. What else have we got? Turbo Stream says, I would like a fire pit on my plot, Scott, but we aren't allowed fires anymore. No, we're not allowed fires anymore for that same reason. Graham says, fingers crossed I get a plot next to me next year. Another challenging project for next year. Glutton for punishment, eh? It will be 35 meter squares then. Fantastic, fantastic. Let's hope you do. Please do share photos of your new plot. Bethan says, when I do feel motivated, I find doing one small job in the garden helps, as it usually leads to getting a couple more done. So you sort of, I mean, this is a good chance to really get into it. When you're sort of feeling comfortable inside, you don't really want to go outside. You just go and tackle one small job, and then it leads to another. I think that applies to a lot of things, doesn't it? You don't really feel like tidying up or doing the washing up, but you do one thing and then you end up in cleaning the entire kitchen, for example. Don't tell the wife I said that. Otherwise, she would expect me to do it. But yeah, I'm totally with you. You know, one small job and leads to more. I am lucky that we can have the fire pit, says Scott, but I know a lot can't. Silly rule, really. Well, debatable. Digwell says, guess it all depends on the variety and when the sprouts are ready. My Christmas are ready. The Brody are still small. My sprouts were ready in sort of October, really. I mean, they're still being picked now. Fantastic sprouts, though. It has to be said, fantastic. Rebecca says, I'm not sure it's a bad thing to lose motivation. We all spend a lot of time in our gardens in the summer. Now is the time to slow down and rest. We have a long summer ahead of us. Yes, Rebecca, you do make a very good point. Sometimes it is a good chance to sort of decompress, take time out of my garden, look to the future, have a break from it. I think you are right. It does do a lot of good. I also find that it helps with the planning. As I said, if you've heard the podcast lately, I've been talking a lot about planning because it's just been impossible to get outside. Thinking about the summer, does help. Graham says, I did MMA for 24 years, mate. That's why I now have spinal problems, degenerative spine and prolapse discs. I know how you feel. I won't go into the list of things I got wrong with me through kickboxing, but it's my own fault, is all I say. Scott says, my sprouts are small, but bigger than I've managed to grow before, so it's getting better at least. I've got to admit, I think liming the soil really does help with sprouts. I would say that, definitely liming the sprouts. Turbo Stream says, I've decided to celebrate the solstice this year. It's the 22nd this year at 3:28. I'm not a Christmas fan myself. I absolutely know how you feel. Wonder Post Farm Fresh Compost, 100% natural compost soil improver, is a vintage blend of manure, farm animal bedding and paddock sweepings, formulated and produced in Suffolk, matured for 3 years. So it's a compost that Digwell is a big fan of. That I'm talking about Wonder Post. I was thinking about buying in compost, to be honest with you, for the allotment, but we're not technically allowed to do it, so I've decided not to. But next year, one of my aims on the allotment is to produce enough compost that I have it available, and I want to have it available all year round. It's going to be a challenge, but I think we can do it. Graham says, Christmas Day is only for the kids in my eyes, to be honest. Soon as Prezzy's opened, then I'm going to the allotment while the missus cooks, as she doesn't allow me in the kitchen anyway. Oh, lucky you. My plans are, well, I do the cooking on Christmas Day. Amanda has the day off, but I do the cooking. We just got to walk the dog in the morning. Owen, hello. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce your surname right, but I'll give it a try. Geo Gigan. I probably pronounced that completely wrong, but I gave it a try. Currently leveling a scrap piece of land in the back garden so that a mixed fruit orchard can be planted in February/March 2024. I have found that my work done now really helps in the spring. So is that how you're sort of motivating yourself, Owen? Is that if you go out and do work now in your garden, it helps in the spring? By the way, I love the idea of a fruit orchard. That sounds fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Exactly, Richard. My own fault. Talk about the MMA. I did it, but I didn't feel it when I was younger. I know how you feel completely. Scott says, I find that making a list helps, but I order a list of important jobs to jobs that are a bonus if I get them done, so it's not too daunting. Yeah, I'm a big fan of making to-do lists, as some of you well know. I actually have an app. Well, it's an app and computer program from Microsoft called To Do. And what I often do is walk around the allotment writing out to-do lists of things that I want to do in order to try and make a note of that. And then when I finish the things, I'll then just tick it off on there and it completes it. It actually really does help, especially if you feel overwhelmed or you feel you've got too much to do. I find that writing a nice little to-do list just sort of calms the mind, I guess you could say, and focuses it on what you need to do, seeing it written down. Yeah, to-do list it's called, is my preferred app. Bethan says, I live in Suffolk, Digwell. Are you exporting all our good compost and leaving me with the Horizon and Levington rubbish? Oh, yes. Yeah. What's the other one I'm thinking of? Plant Grow is meant to be very, very good compost. Somebody in the Facebook group. Unfortunately, in the Facebook group, I may not see who you are, but never mind. I have only been on my garden twice in the last month. It's all about sowing indoors or in the greenhouse. That's a very good point, actually. Yes, I have found myself sowing more seeds indoors, taking the gardening indoors, as I call it, as well, or in the greenhouse because I can't get outside so much. So yeah, I do find that helps with keeping the motivation or keeping the spirits high, just having somewhere to go on the inside. Lynn B has said, just popping in to say happy Christmas, everyone. Happy Christmas to you, Lynn. Hope you are well. Turbo Stream says, I go for a bike ride on Christmas morning. I might pop to the allotment if the weather is okay in the afternoon. Yeah. Digwell says, after your comment on Danny's live, I'll take it all. What else have we got? Graham says, I'm no good with tech. I just use a pen and paper to-do list. Yeah, I used to, but then I would leave the to-do list at home or not where I needed it. I'm finding, and anybody knows me well would know I don't usually do this sort of thing, but I'm finding the to-do list on the phone. I always have it with me. Digwell says, worth checking them out and say, I sent you. Oh yeah, talking about that company, or Wonder Post. Scott says, I'm in Cams, Suffolk. I recommend Madinley mulch. Talking about compost. Graham says, happy Christmas to Lynn. Owen says, I have the fruit trees ready to be planted and really want them in the ground before the sap starts rising again. That's really motivated me to get the leveling and digging done. Yeah. I actually, you do make a good point. I've always said, for me, when I write to-do lists, I always try and make a list of or what is a priority. Is anything that if I don't tackle it now is going to die, it needs to be done right away. For me, that always takes priority. And these sort of things, you want to get them in the ground before the sap. You've got a deadline there, so you've got to get that leveling and digging done. Love to see some photos of what you're doing, Owen. If you are on Facebook, and can post them in the group or send them to me. Excuse me, Richard at veggroundpodcast.co.uk. That would be great. Anna Jen says, I agree about list making. Always motivates me too. Definitely, yeah. I just find it clears the mind. Especially if I feel overwhelmed or like I've got so much to do, just writing a to-do list, suddenly gives me a bit of clarity and calms things down. Bethan says, thanks, Scott and Digwell. I will check them out. And somebody in a Facebook group says, my to-do list is a little notebook which I write in when I do anything, i.e. sewing, potting on, etc. Yeah. I created my own sort of gardening journal for this year to try and keep a note of everything that I wanted to do, etc., etc. Trouble is, I ended up just leaving it in places that I didn't have it with me, which became very, very annoying to try and remember to do everything. I've got to try and get sort of on the website, the veggroundpodcast.co.uk, for people who are members, sort of a notebook / to-do list function that can also work on the phone, to try and figure that out. I don't know how we're going to do it, but I'll figure it out. Limby says, I love to-do lists. I'll be lost without them. I got a chalkboard as well. Chalkboards, yeah. Chalkboards or whiteboards. I'm a big fan of whiteboards too. Again, same sort of thing. Graham says, just reminded me, I have 12 red currant bushes to put in the ground tomorrow. Fantastic. 24 red currants, 24 black currants, 12 red currants. You are going to be busy. It's Stuart in the Facebook group, as he says, he's not IT savvy. Scott says, my goal for 2024 is getting a shed on the plot, having a place to make a cup of tea and get out of the rain will help with the motivation. Actually, it does help with the motivation if you are on the plot to have somewhere dry to go. I often use my greenhouse, actually, somewhere to go and just sort of get out the bad weather rather than going home. When I'm on the allotment, I am down on the allotment. Turbo Stream says, I'm useless at lists. I always forget to look at them and forget to take them with me. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've got a smartphone, but I highly recommend the app that I have, because I pretty much can guarantee I always have my phone with me. And also, when you do tick off a task on that app, it makes this lovely sort of positive sound that just, again, helps, yay, get the endorphins running and boosts things in your head. And Limbic says it's getting into the habit, Turbo Stream. It is totally getting into the habit. As I said, I just find that keeping it on the phone works better for me. Right, we are caught up with the comments, so I think it's time we had a quick video. Now, I have to admit that you set me a mission for this week of making a Christmas dinner soup, and I failed. I have been unable to do that. As I said, I've been moving my sisters this weekend. It's been a really busy week as well, so I have failed that mission. However, I did sow some carrot seeds, which is a video I can show you quickly. Right, guys, we are at my veggie pod because something you wanted me to sow was some carrots, and this is a variety called Amsterdam 3. If you look down here, it says it can be sown January to July. Obviously, we are the middle of December, so it is a little bit early for these, but I think because it is quite mild, we're probably going to be okay. So, all I'm simply going to do, first of all, I'm just going to make a nice drill. This compost is already quite moist, so it should do pretty well. Normally you would want to soak the soil with water before sowing carrots, but I think we're okay here. And then all we're going to do, that's Roxy, there's a few seeds. I'm just simply going to scatter those in, like so. That'll do. Still got a few seeds left over, and we'll leave those to grow. Right, and I'll let you know how they get on in the future. Back to the potting shed. So yes, indeed, those are carrot seeds that supposedly can be sown in January, where they may well germinate. As I said, it is a little bit early. It's not quite January, but it is quite mild. So I'm intrigued to see how they get on. I will share with you guys whether they work or not. They are in the veggie pod, so they have got a bit of cover, but I will also sow a few more in January as well, just to see if they actually work. So quickly, we've got a couple of comments come in during that time. Where were we? Digwell says, write a list to remind you to check your list. Yeah, yeah. We joke about it, but yeah, it does happen. As somebody suffering with ADD, and I didn't realize this when I was doing it. It is a big thing that you have to write a list to check your list. Owen says, I don't have any pictures, but I'll be planting plums, gauges. Oh, lovely. Eating and cooking apples, pear, cherry, quince, medlar, fig, and kiwi. Any pictures, just, even going forward, it'd be great to see the area you're working with and the trees once they're planted and how much fruit you get from those. It would be great. Chili Cake says, Scott, shed was our biggest priority for 2023. Now I can't imagine not having it. I think that's meant to say not. I can't imagine having it. There should be a not in there, I think. Yeah, I mean, I personally have always said that a shed for me in a garden or allotment is like it's the hub. It's the base of operations. Everything I feel works out from that shed because that's where everything is stored. Turbo Stream says, I write a shopping list and I forget to take it with me. So I need a list to remind me of a list, then a note to say, look at the list. Yeah, smartphone. Kai is listening to Roxy barking. Yeah, as you can tell, when Roxy barks in the gun, we're trying to train it out of her. But when I'm making a video like that, it does pop me off because I have to try and get her indoors to keep her, stop her from barking. Digbert says, your forehead is a good place to write it. You'll see it in the mirror and people will possibly remind you as well. TurboStream says, Digbert, I definitely don't want to be looking in the mirror. And again, speaking of shopping retail therapy, buying new stuff for the garden is always a good motivator. That is a very good point. I didn't even think of that. Yeah, pop into the shop and sort of saying, oh, I might buy those seeds because they look fun, or buy that plant, that looks fun, or, oh, wow, that's a new spade I might use. And I'm guilty of that all the time. Just looking around for some of my new spades. A couple of them are missing. Where have they gone? Anyway, yeah. It sort of makes you get out and do something in the garden. Yeah, totally with you. Now, bit of a laugh, bit of a funny video to share with you, actually. Somebody said last week, I've forgotten who this was, so apologies, about some singing reindeers. So I'm going to quickly pop that up while I remember.
Like the ones I used to know, where the trees listen and their sounds you hear so clear, sleigh bells in the snow, in the snow, I'm dreaming of Christmas, with every Christmas card. May your days be merry and bright, and may all your Christmases be white.
fantastic, wasn't it? Absolutely fantastic. I thought that was a good laugh as soon as I got that. I was going to try and do something with music and decided to leave it. But good, good laugh, isn't it? And I think that was based off the garden centre, the Arena Garden Centre, and we did a bit of a garden centre visit last week. Yeah, I've still got the video come out about that, but yeah, a bit of fun. So we're back to the comments. So Toby Storm says a new year is a motivation to get out on the plot. Yeah, again, this comes into that whole thing I've said earlier that Christmas becomes about, oh, we'll leave it to the new year. We'll leave it until after Christmas. But new year, new beginnings, they all say that's a good reason to get out, or a reason for change. Now, maybe more people will start growing their own food as a New Year's resolution, etc., etc. So, yeah, definitely with you there. Idaho is loving the singing reindeer. Fantastic. Scott says it's my 40th next year, so a shed is definitely on the list. Fantastic. I think that Stuart says sounds very much like Digwell. I've never heard Digwell sing, so I'll take your word for that. Idaho says the one in the middle doesn't quite look like a reindeer. And Graham says, brilliant. Now my missus wants singing reindeer on the wall. Oh dear, oh dear. Terence says, my cousin sent this to me from a garden centre in Carlisle. One reason to avoid garden centres in December. I've got to put that video up soon that I shot last week. As I said, it's just been a busy for me. Scott says, days start getting longer from the 22nd of December, which is definitely motivating me. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to come back. Let's bring this back to the motivation conversation. For me, I do find that planning and making plans does help keep me motivated. I've been talking about that a lot on the podcast this week, how I want to plan out my allotment, get the seeds planned so I can sow seeds out each week, planned out, make sure I've got all the seeds available in my seed fridge. Definitely does help with the motivation. There's nothing better than looking forward and starting new projects and things like that. Another motivator that I have found that helps, or another one of my motivators has been projects. I love tackling projects, the design, the build, and getting on with that. So definitely that helps with motivation as well. And something else I've found to be a good motivator is actually the social media side of things. Because I'm podcasting, I've got to talk about my gardening and podcasting on a weekly basis. That has kept me getting keeping motivated, because I've got to go out there and work. The same as, I'm sure, if you're a YouTuber, you've got to go out and do something to have something to show. That definitely has helped the motivation. What have we got? Idaho says, yes, Scott, a few more days and the days will start getting longer. Cannot wait for longer days. Turbo says, when do I send my plot photos for the year, Richard? A short slideshow like last year. Anytime now would be great. Next week we are doing the garden quiz. So the week after is probably when I'll show those off, if you have send any in, if you can send any in. So please do. Would be great to get those nice slideshows going. And 2024, I'm going to make a real good point about taking photos of my own plots regularly. I'll come to that in a minute. Digwell says, my singing is great for curdling milk. I don't believe that for a second. Tomex says, I love my plot shed, Scott. Don't we all? A good shed, hence why I'm in a shed. It makes it all worthwhile. Nigel Money Boots has joined. Hello all, late again. Hello, my friend. I'm sorry, I've not forgot to ring you this week. I've just been so busy that I have not had the time. Apologies, but I will try and call you tomorrow. Digwell says, I was going to say social media, YouTube, etc. A big club of like-minded enthusiasts. Yeah, I definitely find that sharing your sort of trials and tribulations of the allotment and gardening does help keep the motivation. But you also get people off their help and assistance, and like this show, how we all come together and we chat about our gardening. You know, it certainly helps. And I don't feel any of us have an ego amongst ourselves. We're all very friendly, and I think that helps a lot with the motivation in sort of saying, yeah, we can all do this. We can all do this together. And this is how I do it, and this is how I do it. It helps definitely with the motivation. Turbo Stream says there must be motivation to feed those pesky algorithms. There is, if you worry about the algorithms. I mean, I don't pay much attention to the algorithms so much. I should, but I don't. I'm more interested in producing content. Graham says, hi, Nigel, mate. There's a few of those. Dig Idaho says, yes, Digwell, we don't have allotments over here, so it's kind of difficult to make connections with people. The YouTube groups are nice. Yeah, that's something Amanda and I have discussed, that if we ever had a large enough garden, would I give up the allotment? But I honestly think if I was to give up the allotment, I would miss the social side. The fact that when I'm on the allotment, I am on the allotment. I've got no technology around me to distract me. I am on the allotment, and if at home I don't feel, or I get easy, or I'm easier distracted at home compared to the allotment. So I do think the social side of things. I was talking back in the summer. I was talking to Lucy Chamberlain and Saul Walker at Gardener's World, and we were talking about the open gardens that we can take part in. I don't know if anybody's ever taken part in the open gardens, but I was sort of thinking to myself, because they asked if I would open up my garden with Roxy. I don't think it's possible, but it does make you sort of think, if I was to open up the gardens, or if we were to open up our gardens on one day a year and invite people in to come in and have a look at our gardens, would that help with the motivation? Having to show off, if you like, make sure your garden's looking perfect for that, maybe just one day. But as we all know, you've got to garden a lot more than just one day to make your garden look perfect for that one day. Does that help with the motivation? I think it does. I generally do think that showing off your garden helps with the motivation. It's the same as if you have somebody come around to your house for dinner or something. You suddenly have got to have that massive tidy up so that they don't think that you live in squalor. In theory, anyway. That's the theory. Yeah, I do think being social and being welcoming and showing off your garden, showing off is I think showing off is the right word, but I do think that does help with the motivation. However, I also think it can hinder in some ways, because some people feel that, I think we spoke earlier about peer pressure. Sometimes that peer pressure to ensure it's all looking good, to show off on YouTube or on Instagram, or with you, or on the open garden plans, National Open Gardens, something or another. I think it's a good thing, but it can also add to that peer pressure at the same time. And that's a difficult thing. I think when you feel that peer pressure, that's the time you need to take a break. You need to take a step back and remind yourself why you are doing this. Are you doing it for likes? Are you doing it for everybody else? Or are you doing it for yourself? That's an important part, I think, too. Turbo Stream says, I don't think this community on a Sunday is motivation every week. I do think this community on Sunday is motivation every week. So thank you, everyone who comes along, makes my week, especially for us living on our own. Well, we're always happy to see you, buddy. And yeah, I do think this works as well as motivation, but also the friendliness and the I want to say rivalry. It's not the right word. The jolliness. I can't think of the right word, but the jolliness that we have to bump each other up, if that makes sense. Nigel is saying National Garden Scheme. No, it's along that. I think it's the National Open Garden Scheme or something, NOGS, from memory. I think it is run by the National Garden Scheme or something like that. Something like that. Idaho says, yes, this group is a motivation. I'm sure it's the same with many of the other live shows that are going on out there as well on the YouTube and Facebook. I think they're all motivation as well. But it's all good fun. And it's good fun. That's the key thing I think we've got to remember with gardening is it's meant to be fun. Definitely meant to be fun. Camaraderie, that's the word I was looking for. Camaraderie, that's it. Yes, absolutely, yeah. Anna Jones says this YouTube group is the best one, obviously. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Turbo Stream says, I'm glad you corrected yourself, Richard. What did I correct myself with? You have to remind me so I can laugh at myself. Yeah. Tigwell says, I thought it was a cheese board. Oh dear. Always someone, isn't there, making good jokes. Normally Digwell as well comes out with the good jokes too. But I think that's important. I do think that gardening should be fun. Again, we come back to that whole thing I said earlier about peer pressure, the feeling that you have to show it off to everybody else. And I think I've met up with a lot of people who suddenly feel this pressure that their garden has to look good for Instagram or YouTube, and I've sort of said, and they're feeling that pressure, feeling that stress, and I think it's important to recognize that gardening should be fun, and it should be our gardens or our allotments that we are enjoying. And I think that's that is the real motivating for me. I don't go on for anybody else. I go on for me. I mean, yeah, I'm growing my own food, but it's for me mostly. Graham says this is the only live I watch now, as I love the people in the chat. Keeps me going. Thank you very much. You're always welcome. Turbo Stream says, I don't think this group. I do think. Yeah, sorry, that was me. That was me. Sorry. Yeah, I'm with you now when I corrected myself. Scott says, I totally agree, Turbo Stream. The live on Sundays in the group is general, always gives me ideas and motivation. Same with Dig Round Money Boots out there. So thanks to all. I do think, there's some really, really good YouTube channels out there. Dig Round Money Boots, Bethan, I'm trying to think, is there anybody else in this group who are on YouTube? But all of you guys are producing this fantastic content that people want to watch and get inspired and motivated from too. But it is important not to get stressed out about it. Greg says, going to see allotment is as good as doing something sometimes. I'm lucky I can walk our dog to the allotment from home. In winter, it never looks that bad and doesn't change much day to day. That is true, isn't it? You can sort of not have to worry about weeding so much on the allotment because it doesn't grow as much. And also, I don't know when your inspections on your allotments run. Ours stop in October and start again in May, so we're not likely to get inspected. Now, that's a good point, though. Something that just came to my mind is we do get inspected quite regularly on our allotment site. And it's to make sure everything's tidy and everything's being used and everything is abiding by the rules. And I found that to be quite a good motivator in some ways, because you've sort of got this person looking over your shoulder effectively that could turn around and say, got to sort that out, it's not right. So it gives you, I find it sort of motivates me to focus again on what's important, because there's a chance somebody might come along and say, you got 4 weeks to sort that out. It can be a stress at the same time, but I have had weed notices in the past because couch grass particularly difficult on the bottom half of a plot. But I have found that constantly in the back of my mind motivates. Definitely motivates. Idaho says, I've learned a lot from this group. Suggestions, photo tours, discussion. It's all good. Idaho obviously has a YouTube channel as well. I meant to mention too. Well worth checking out. Scott says, and others on here that I'm starting to watch, says Scott. Yeah, there's quite a few on here. Tomo Stream says, there is so much great garden content that it's impossible to watch it all. I do need to cut down for next year. Yeah. I mean, the thing I like about YouTube channels when it comes to motivation is that usually only 10 minutes long videos. There are a few that are longer, but if you watch Gardener's World every Friday night, you've got to sit down for a solid, is it hour long show to watch it all. Whereas 10 minutes, I find I can fit like 10 minutes when I'm on my lunch break or just having a cup of coffee. Just nice thing I like about the YouTube channels or reels on TikTok as well. I quite enjoy those at the moment. Bethan says, what I like about this group is everyone shares the highs and lows of gardening, and sometimes it's very reassuring to know other people are having the same issues with bugs, pests, etc. Again, this comes back to what I was saying earlier with us all sharing. We're all sharing everything that we're doing. Adds this element that is more realistic than what you might see on TV or in magazines, because TV and magazines try and show the best things, and sometimes people need to know we're all in the same boat. I remember when on the podcast, when I had a weed notice, I did a podcast about it, and the amount of people that came back and said, I felt so reassured and less stressed knowing that you had a weed notice on the allotment, that it just made me feel better. And I think that is important to share those sort of lows as well. Graham says, I watched the guys on here, Diggy, Nigel, Muddy Boots, but only watch this live chat to use to watch a good few others at one point, but spent more time watching and not doing. Yeah, it does get a bit difficult to keep up, like I said. That's why I like podcasts, audio podcasts, because I listen to those while driving. Nigel says, although I plant out regimented sale, I do not do gardening tasks in the same way. Do you just do it as and when, or what then, Nigel? Let us know. To perform a job, speaking of the devil, to perform a job properly, I need to be in the right frame of mind, and that may not happen when the list says so. That is actually very true. Again, I was talking earlier about writing lists of when I want to sow seeds, but you do have to be in the right frame of mind. And Mother Nature, if the weather's too cold outside to sow carrot seeds or something, Mother Nature ain't going to let you sow your carrot seeds, or your carrot seeds aren't going to survive just because you've sown them. It is a case of working with nature. Digrat says, I've just trimmed down the 300 channels I follow to 200. Glad to see you're still following me then. I feel very privileged. Ballysian says, I like the channel because we are a team. If one of us is struggling to grow something, our team knowledge can help. Absolutely. That's what I wanted to build this around, is that we can help each other out. Turbo Stream says, I watched Mr. Smith's vegetable garden yesterday. He was starting a new allotment and said, you will be judged on the straightness of your rows. So old school compared to today. Yeah. I mean, I like the look of when all the rows are straight of leeks and carrots, etc., And then, do I have the patience to do that myself? No, I do not. I'd like to, but I just, ADD plays up though. That's when I just need to get on and do it rather than fannying around, as I may call it, to make sure everything looks good. But I need to. Stuart says, I only pick the channels that are long-standing, as some of them only last a couple of months. This group is supportive, and the supporters club is a great bonus. Of course it is. Turbot Street, Mr. Smith was Jeffrey Smith, by the way. Us old folk remember him. Yeah, I think I've seen some bits of it, but old school, as you say. Nigel is excuse me, sorry guys. Nigel is a straight line man. I like straight lines. I just can never do it because it's the ADD basically. I'm in too much of a rush. Which is something I've only just learned about myself. Idaho says, I get distracted by some other YouTube topics for several months. I noticed that last night I have less garden channels. Don't know what happened to the ones I used to watch, but I'm going to trim. It happens, doesn't it? I think we're all interested in a wide range of topics, be it gardening. I was into my camper vans for a bit. I'm sort of relearning the guitar at the moment as well. So I'm watching a lot of guitar videos and things like that once again. Obviously, there's a lot of podcasting channels that I used to follow, but I know quite a bit about podcasts after 10 years. So, yeah, definitely. And as Digwell sort of said, Lego, another YouTube genre that he follows. So definitely other things that we are interested in outside of gardening. And that's important. That is important also to get out and try other things, I think. You know, if we were all the same, the world would be a very boring place. Greg says, the allotment site I am at host one Sunday morning a month social gathering, often with a theme where someone comes to a talk or help create something. Next message to follow on. I'll keep my eye out for that. Yeah, I've recently joined our local camera club, which is every Wednesday night I go along. Learning a lot from it, actually. But the social side of it is definitely much more motivating and showing off what you can do than anything else. Nigel says, bless you. Thank you. Turbo Stream says, I use a measuring stick, Nigel. Gotta love a string line too. Yeah, that's what I mean. Bless you, Richard. Thank you very much. Turbo Stream says, it's the law to sneeze 3 times. I think it was only twice I sneezed there, so I'm hoping the third one will come along soon if it is the law. Greg continues. The allotment site I am on do a once a month Sunday morning. Someone comes in to do a talk or help create something, making scarecrows, hedge rugs, habitats, etc. It's a good thing. I think it does help. Again, what I found with the camera club, you know, we did a good one on Wednesday where it's taking photos and we're sort of light painting, as they call it. And it was quite good to get that person looking over your shoulder and giving you pointers to really help with motivation. The wide variety of channels is a big plus for learning. I love learning everything. Digwell, good idea. We tried a summer barbecue. 30 promised to attend and bring something 4 turned up. Sad times. Yeah, we used to have a barbecue on our allotment site as well, but I don't know what's happened in recent years. Well, actually, no, they banned barbecues, didn't they? That's what happened. But there's a motorbike going on outside. I don't know how, when there's nowhere near a road. I can hear it going off. I'm pretty sure it's a motorbike anyway. Where are we? Digwell says, can you wipe the camera lens? You are blurry. Am I? It looks fine on my lens. It possibly the internet connection then hasn't flagged up as being low. YouTube has a video for pretty much everything from sowing onion seeds to the vastness of outer space. There are a couple of subjects it's not allowed to have, though. Quite right too. Right, shall we have a look at the photos that you guys have been posted? Because there's been a good lot of photos this week, actually. I'm very, very pleased to see quite a few photos being posted in the... sorry, Digwell's saying sneezy from the sneezes. Sorry. I hope not. I hope I didn't sneeze. I faced the other way. I've got a teleprompter in front of the camera screen. That's why I've got to be a bit careful. Right, I said let's have a look at your photos. it's time for your photos. First of all, Bethan, who's in the group tonight, she shared this click and grow and the growth after just 11 days. This is a hydroponics growing system, which is absolutely fantastic. I've got to say, I keep rethinking about going back to one of these hydroponic growing systems. These are, I believe, these are little pods that when you want to grow them, you pop them in and pop a top off and start to grow. Look fantastic. And after 11 days, that's quite good amount of growth. Now, next, Scott, he has noticed that his red kale doesn't get attacked by pigeons. This is something I've noticed myself as well. And I have wondered if the same can be said for red cabbage. Do they get hit by pigeons as much as green? It's going to be an experiment for next year. I've just decided to make a note of that. Red brassicas. Just decided that while thinking about this. Now, Kate, this is Chili Kate. She's managed to mulch her raspberry bed in between rushing around doing the Christmas jobs that we all have to do. As we said earlier, we're all pretty busy with Christmas at this time of year. We need a bit more time for gardening. Stuart has got his garlic just starting to poke through and grow. He saved the seed from last year, which is something I do quite often and highly recommend you do as well. And it looks great, doesn't it? Good to see good growth from garlic. Andy, now I haven't seen him in the group tonight, but he has been clearing out his new allotment. And as you can see from all this picture and the other pictures in the group, there was a lot of carpet. I know carpet is often banned on the allotment sites, and when you see this, you can understand why. That is a lot, isn't it? That is just criminal to leave that behind, I think. Kate has got a fresh delivery from the Garden Organic Heritage Seed Library. Now, I don't know quite how this works, but my understanding is you sign up for it and they send you seeds that you have to try and grow and save seed from to try and keep these varieties in like a bank, keep them going for prosperity, so that we all know in the future these varieties will still be around. I know there are some lost varieties, lost to time, so this is a good way of trying to make sure it doesn't happen. Now, Stephen, I haven't seen him in the group tonight again, but he has been prepping, as I've put there, prepping his allotment for the winter. His allotment's quite small when I've been there, but as you can see, he uses every little bit of space, and the soil is fantastic. He's on top of the downs there, so it is a pretty much difficult one. So please do keep sharing those photos. We really do love to see them. Post in our Facebook group if you are a member of our Facebook group. If you're not a member of our Facebook group, please do go and join. You can send to me via social media. Just send us a message and the photos. Or you can email me, richard@theveggrowerpodcast.co.uk. That's richard@theveggrowerpodcast.co.uk. Great photos, I've got to say, really good, a lot of photos. Love seeing all the photos. Right, it says, I love to see the photos as well. Indeed, we do. Nigel says, can we get man flu from Richard through the camera lens? Possibly. If you're a man, it's most likely you're going to get man flu through the camera lens, can't you? I don't think I've got man flu though. Digwell says, no obligation to save the Heritage Seed Library seeds. Sorry. Okay, I'm corrected on that. No obligation. But I think I think the idea was to try and save the seeds. Although I'm at CD Sunday in February, as I've said in before. I'm doing a talk on the stage in February, and one of the big things that they try and do there is encourage people to save seeds and share those seeds, which is a great idea, really good idea. But I've started to be a bit wary particularly with the cucurbits, the pumpkins, the squash plants, because of how promiscuous they can be and things like that. I'm not too fussed about, but the the squashes are a different story at the moment. Anne has joined. Hello, everyone. Just got in. Got to watch us all back this afternoon. Sending best wishes to all from Canada. Lovely to see you, Anne. Hope you are well. Ido says, well, I saw some friends use carpet in their garden paths. I learned carpet can be useful for smothering weeds, but the weeds soon get a foothold and then it's impossible. I think it's fine. It's fine if you lift the carpet up regularly to try and stop it from coming into the ground. It's when it's left and then the grass and everything grows over the carpet and they just become buried is where it becomes a bit of a problem. Bunny Susan says, I kept racing pigeons for years. You couldn't wear anything red in the loft. The birds would have went mad, flying everywhere. Don't know why. So is it the red or is it the purple that keeps them off the brassicas? I wonder. Or definitely the kale anyway. I wonder. Love to find out more if anybody has done anything like that. Digwa says, I'm taking part in the Achucha trial for Ghana Organic next year. You're just trying to make me sneeze again, aren't you? I'd love to know how that you get on with that, Digwa. I'm sure you'll document it on the allotment on the channel. Sorry. Nigel says, I wrap carpet around my worm bins for winter insulation. I mean, that is a good use. At least it's not on the ground. And again, I don't really have so much of a problem with the carpet when it's being lifted regularly. It's when it's left in the ground that I think there's a bit of a problem. That's why, and Turbo Stream has just said that his allotment bans the carpet. Many allotments do ban carpet for that very reason. It gets left on the ground and buried and becomes a bit of a problem for many people. That's exciting, Digger. Turbo Stream says, I saved my parsnip seed. No idea what variety they are. Yeah, I mean, things like parsnip and carrots, I don't have I'm not so worried about it. It's the pumpkins and the squash with cross-pollination. Greg says, my chickens won't go near a red purple cabbage that I've grown and put in for them. They huddled at the other end of the run in fear. Interesting. So if you do have a problem with pigeons, perhaps it's a case of growing the red ones. There you go. Digwa says, Heritage Seed Library have quite strict rules to prevent cross-pollination. I can't satisfy their criteria. I don't think anybody can really satisfy their criteria, really, or prevent cross-pollination. What I found I got a Crown Prince from CD Sunday, but they definitely weren't Crown Prince. And that's why I'm just not going to try and save squash seeds in the future. That's a Mick Poltney top tip, Nigel, talking about wrapping the worm bin in carpet. Kate says, as a Heritage Seed Library member, I pay a little each month to keep it going, and we can choose 6 varieties from the library each year. I'm also a seed guardian, which is where I grow them and send the seed back. That's a good, I love the idea of these seed guardians. Yeah, I'm going to have to look into that at some point. Digwell says, trouble with carpet is it's made from plastics, etc. Yeah, there can be plastics and stuff in it. I mean, for me, it's just the fact that it gets left in the ground and then somebody, as we saw in that picture, somebody comes along and has to remove it is, for me, where the problem I have with carpet. Turbo Stream says, I noticed my plot neighbour has red brassicas that have not been eaten and are uncovered. It must be something about it. The pigeons around me must be colourblind. Okay, there's one that falls through the crack. But it'll be an interesting experiment to see what happens with it. Nigel says, yes, his wild bins have the same carpet as our lounge. Excellent. Anna says, slugs stay off a lot of red things. Acetylcholine pigment makes things bitter, I believe. Yeah, interesting. So there's a lot of A lot of reasons to try and grow red things, red plants. Turbo Stream, did you get your lounge carpet from Mick? um, Jenny says, hello, first part of the family meetup over. So pop up to say hello before the next part starts. Hope you are all well. Lovely to see you, Jenny. Hope you are well. Hope you're having a great time. Stuart says many birds see different colours to us. I believe some birds can see infrared more than us, I believe. But hey, who knows? Apparently, Nigel gave Mick Poultney the Compost King. Is that the correct one? I sometimes get the two muddled up. Gave him the offcuts. Yeah, indeed. Right, guys. I would start asking you for suggestions for next week, but next week it will be Christmas Eve, and we're going to be doing the gardening pub quiz. So be prepared for lots of questions, all for fun, of course, and have to find out how much you actually know about your chosen gardening subject. But I do have a question to ask you, and I have been approached by somebody to take part in something where I've got to ask 3 questions. I'm being a bit vague because there is a bit of a what's the word? Embargo on this, so I can't mention anything until it actually happens. But I've got to ask somebody 3 questions about vegetable gardening. What 3 questions what would make some good questions? I know it's very vague, but it's just the way. These aren't going to be in a quiz next week, but I've got to ask 3 questions. As I say, it's vague because I'm on an embargo. Scott says pigeons don't see the purple. Apparently, I read it somewhere, but can't remember where. It's interesting. I'll be interested to find out if that does make a difference. I'm definitely going to try and experiment to see, although I've seen it with the kale, so it definitely does make a difference. Time Extreme says probably the best way, Nigel, to be fair. Not sure it works the other way around. Yeah. Only use carpets to wrap the bins, not on the ground. Yeah. I think, it's one of those that a few people who leave it on the ground has ruined it for everybody else, because it's just difficult to get rid of then. Idaho says that's interesting, talking about the purple and the pigeons. Digra says pigeons are scared of red and yellow, so they steer away from it. Interesting indeed. Next week's task is to get a suitable beverage tipple ready, Hick. Yeah, well, I will have Amanda with me, so we will be trying our best. Graham says, will we need a pen and paper ready for next Sunday's live then, Richard? Yes, pen and paper ready, because what we'll do is I'm going to ask, I think it's 3, maybe 4 rounds of questions. Anybody who's taken part in this before gets the idea. But yeah, get a pen and paper ready. I'll go through the questions. You write it down. You don't put on the comments, of course, but when we go through the answers, that's when you can start putting it in the comments, and we can see it's all for fun, but we can see how good your gardening knowledge is. But it is all just for fun. Richard, will you dress up as Santa for next week's show? I don't think I've got anything to dress up as Santa with, but I will see what I can do, as it is Christmas, and I could dye my beard white, couldn't I, or something? I mean, I desperately need a haircut as well, but that's a whole other story. Digwell says, no good grown red cabbage in place of green, as they have different culinary uses. It's more for an experiment. To see what is needed. Idaho says, how many square feet is necessary to grow veg for a family of 4? Good question. Yeah, that could be a good question, actually. How many square feet? I'm going to make a note of that. It could be a very good question, actually. Any guest appearances next week? Only Amanda and possibly Roxy, knowing her. Although we could have a bit of fun, couldn't we? Could have a bit of fun and see what happens. I mean, Santa's going to be busy. He's got deliveries to make next week. But we can have a bit of fun with guest appearances. I mean, some other people might pop in. I don't know who knocks on the door, who comes by. Oh, are you talking about the questions? I haven't organised that, to be honest, because everything's been a bit busy. So if anybody does want to do a video of a question, email me and I will send you the question over, but I will need the video by Sunday, of course. So what we did last year, and I think that's what Digwell's alluding to now, what we did last year is we just got a few people to send in a video of them asking a question that we played in, just to add a bit of variation. If anybody would be interested in doing that, it would need to be, as I said, it doesn't need to be a fancy video, but just recorded so I can play that in for next week. That would be good. Sorry, not about next week, as my house will be full of family. A question: which carrot variety grows the longest? Says Stuart. That's a bit subjective for what this is, but I can throw that in there to ask this person. Turbo Stream says the UK government produced a planting plan for wartime allotments to feed a family of 4 IG, talking about the 10 months. Digwell says, give me a question. Okay, I will give you a question. I'll message you it over. Idaho says, yes, we have similar information here, Digwell and Turbo, but most people don't pay attention to it. The thing I would say, 10 rods was what or 250 square foot, as Nigel says, was what the wartime guidance was. And I kind of agree with that. But there's also all those people who do, I'm going to use an example, square foot gardening, which I hate. When I've tried to do it, I hate, because you have to be so organized to really get it. Who say that you can actually do it in a much smaller area. That's where a bit of ambiguity comes across with this question. But yeah, the original idea, I guess that could work. Yeah, how many square, I'll do it meters, to feed a family of 4? So it's just can't be a bit unambiguous when it comes to it. But yeah, Digwell, I will send you a question if you can do a video for that. If anybody else wants to do it, then please do send us an email and do that. Is that Stuart? Happy to read a question. Do you want me to set it as well? Happy to read a question. Do you want me to set it as well? Oh, no, I will send the questions to you. I've got the questions already worked out. Actually, Margaret's worked out the questions, I should say. But I will send the question. I will send the question if you can do a video. Is that Stuart or is that anybody else? Sorry, this can get tricky. Will growing your own save money? Again, that's a bit of a difficult question to get a definitive answer, isn't it? Because in theory, I think growing your own does save money. But then if you've got to lay out loads of tools, or you want the fanciest and best thing, it can backfire a bit, because you end up spending more money on other or gardening tools or things like that. Another good question there. Fab, I'm happy to read out, Stuart. Fantastic. I'll send you a question then. Digwell says, it used to be a law in the 1950s/60s that a new house had to be built with a garden to feed for. Yeah, I think it should be law. Or if they're not building the houses with that size garden, then they have to build allotments for every single house. I think there was a place somewhere in the country. I think it's also in other places in the world, other countries, where they built like each house had an acre land for community farming. Um, so I can't remember where that was, but I think that, or was it half acre, something like that. But I think that's a great idea as well. If only we could come back to some of these ideas that we used to. What else have we got? Nigel will do a video as well. Thank you very much. I will send you those over. Make a note of those while I remember. Idaho says she likes that idea as well. Fantastic. I think it should be law that we all new houses do have a good sized garden for growing your own. Although not everybody's into gardening in some ways. Digwa says, question, is there any real affordable plan for retail peat-free compost as the stuff now is generally rubbish? All I can say to answer that question, because again, it's a bit of an ambiguous question, but all I can say is that I think the more that we start buying the more popular, the decent peat-free compost, and it does exist to a certain extent, it does exist, but the more we start buying it, I think the cheaper it will get. We've just got to start making that difference. I mean, the one I really like is the stuff from the range where you could get four bags for £10, and it's pretty decent stuff. But Nigel says, best send that question to the comments, mate. Yeah. Stuart says it's a real shame that all new houses around us only have a postage stamp for garden. It is a real shame. It is a real shame. I mean, if you have a flat, like I said, I had to move my sister today. She doesn't have a garden at all, although there's lots of green spaces around the area for that. Best send that question. Oh yeah, I read that, didn't I? No space for these days. Yeah, that's the trouble. There is no space for these big gardens anymore. They've all, yeah, that's a whole other thing we can get a bit political about. Right. Kate says, if you have to pick 3 veg for a small space, what would you pick? Good question, Kate. But for what I need to do, it needs to be something that this guy, the person I'm asking the question for, can go and research and come back with a definitive answer for in a short amount of time. Digwell says, obviously not one for Richards. That question about peat-free compost. I know it says each property in my current community has at least 1 acre, but they have HOA rules and restrictive covenants. So the result is most people have lush lawns and a few meticulously trimmed bushes. It's boring, isn't it? There's no variation. This is the thing about allotments, because allotment is so different from one plot to the next. There's so much biodiversity that's why allotments have the largest amount of different wildlife in each area, because everyone's growing different varieties of apple trees or carrots or and it just goes to make things differently. That's why grass and trimmed bushes, just no biodiversity, no nature. Digwell says, blame the council development plan to Stuart. Idaho says, Luss, I'm moving here indeed. Digwell says, do the peat-free one. Yeah, as I said, it's I'm being very, very difficult. I know I'm not making it easy to come up with these 3 questions because it's on an embargo. I could probably say it's something to do with the BBC that I've been asked to do, but that's about it. That's all I can go into. Right, guys, it is just gone 7:30. It is time to get out of here and close up and get done. We won't be in this shed for a couple of weeks. We will be in my other office. No reason, just because it's going to be easier to do everything that we need to do indoors. So next week, Christmas Eve, we're going to be doing the pub quiz, and then the week after that is going to be New Year's Eve. So all going to be a lot of fun. I'm sure you will see. Well, guys, time to go. You take care, and I will speak to you again next Sunday, and I will message over everyone that has agreed to take part. Take care, guys.